You know the world is ending. It's a story we've been telling ourselves forever, really. But the way we tell it, that's always changing. So today we're going to dive into 3 really modern and honestly pretty conflicting ideas about the apocalypse, from a spiritual prison break to a divine countdown. I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a question that really gets under your skin, right? And what's fascinating is that each of these modern apocalypse stories starts with that exact same unsettling that the reality you trust, the one you wake up to every day, is fragile, flawed, or maybe, just maybe, it isn't even real at all. And this quote from spiritual teacher Carrie K, it just nails the problem perfectly. It suggests that our world could be a kind of prison, but one that's so total, so complete, that we don't even realize we're locked up. We can't see the bars. Okay, so our first narrative frames this whole thing as a spiritual battle. The idea here isn't about escaping a physical place. No, it's about breaking free from an illusion. It's a fight to liberate our very own perception from, well, an invisible cage. So according to this worldview, we're all living inside something called the false matrix. They say it's this manufactured reality, a purely mental world that's been designed to cut us off from our true spiritual source, trapping us in this very limited, one-track way of thinking. And this is where you really see the difference. On one side, you've got the false matrix. It's a mental prison, total disconnection, a super short, unnatural lifespan. But on the other side is what's called the divine matrix, our supposed original home, a reality of limitless connection, infinite potential. And get this, a lifespan that could stretch for thousands of years. So you have to ask, right? Who built this prison? Well, this is where it gets wild. The theory points to these beings called the Archons. They're the supposed engineers of the false matrix, and the story goes that they lost their own connection to the divine source, so they lost their ability to create. So what did they do? They built this system to trick us into creating reality for them. So how do you get out? Well, according to this story, it's not about fighting some big external bad guy. The path to freedom is all about sparking an awakening inside yourself. The idea is that these so-called light workers are actually born into this system just to wake up from the inside. And it only takes one awakened person to start shaking the whole thing up, leading to a massive collective awakening that just dissolves the false reality. All right, so let's completely shift gears here. That's one theory, but what if escape isn't the answer? Our second big idea says something totally different, that the end of the world is a pre-planned event on a divine biblical schedule. And that clock? Well, it's ticking. You see, these incredibly detailed timelines, right? People who study prophecy create them, trying to map out biblical predictions directly onto our calendar. They're looking for patterns, for sacred numbers, for countdowns, anything that points to a very specific, predetermined series of events for the end times. Now, for a lot of these timelines, the absolute key, the linchpin, really is a prophecy from the book of Daniel. It talks about a final week of years, which is the 7-year period of total chaos called the Tribulation, and it's supposed to happen right before the Messiah returns and our current age comes to an end. So here's how one of these models works. See, the whole thing kicks off from one specific debated starting point, the crucifixion, here dated at 32 AD. From that point, you add what's called the Church Age, which is about 2,000 years. That leads right up to an event called the Rapture. And according to this timeline, the Rapture triggers that 7-year tribulation running from 2025 to 2032, and it all ends with the Messiah's return. Okay, so we've had the spiritual prison break, we've had the divine countdown. For our third and final story, we're throwing all of that out the window. This is a totally secular vision of the end, where reality isn't a prison or a plan. It's just a plan of biology and physics, a problem that can be solved with code. First up, you've got the singularity. This is the idea that eventually we're going to build an artificial intelligence that is so much smarter than us, it triggers this kind of runaway technological explosion. For people who believe in this is our salvation, it's a way to upload our minds, escape our fragile bodies, and basically leave biology behind for good. And then there's the other big one, the simulation hypothesis. Now this probably sounds a little familiar, right? It takes that false reality idea we saw and just gives it a high-tech makeover. The theory is that everything, our entire universe, is just an incredibly advanced computer simulation, and we're all just characters running around inside the program. And I love this quote from the philosopher David Chalmers because it captures just how normal this theory can sound. In this version, our gods aren't some all-powerful divine beings. They're just programmers, Maybe even, like he says, just some bored kid in the universe next door. But then that brings up a much darker what if. The creators of our simulation aren't just bored hackers. What if they're actually malicious? If that's the case, our reality isn't just an illusion, it's a prison designed by a god that might actually be evil. So let's just take a breath. We've got a spiritual escape, a divine countdown, and a technological transcendence. I mean, they sound completely different, right? But what if underneath it all, they're actually telling the exact same story? Let's break down the blueprint. Okay, here's the core idea. Even though they use totally different words, one talks about souls, one talks about scripture, one talks about computer code. These are all what you could call modern apocalyptic myths. And as you're about to see, they are all built on the exact same foundation. And this is the big aha moment. Just look at this breakdown. Every single narrative defines a problem with our world. It identifies some kind of hidden masters or architects controlling everything. And it offers a very specific path to salvation. The names change, Archons, God, programmers, but the basic story, the structure, is identical. So when you boil it all down, these stories are tapping into the same basic human feelings. They all start with this sense that the world is broken, or just not quite real. They all hint that there are hidden rules and secret forces running the show. And most importantly, they all offer a way out. Some secret knowledge, some special events that promises escape, a new beginning, and ultimately, hope. And that brings us to this final quote from the philosopher Jean Baudrillard, and it's a pretty chilling thought. He suggests that maybe we become fascinated not just with the idea of the end, but with the very systems themselves, whether they're spiritual, divine, or technological. The systems that promise to wipe us out. Which leaves us with one final question to think. Are these narratives just warnings about what's coming? Or do they reveal something much deeper about us? A kind of secret desire to escape what we have now, to be a part of some bigger, more meaningful story, even if that story ends with the world as we know it coming to an end?